Welcome to Dentology, the Business of Dentistry podcast. In this podcast, we delve into the non-clinical aspects of dentistry with inspirational guests from across the profession. You will hear incredible life stories, pick up valuable business tips and be entertained. I'm Andy Acton and I'm joined by my co-host, Chris Drevens.
Wow, that was great.
Really enjoyable, as ever. I mean, it never ceases to amaze me, the depth and the wisdom of the people we talk to.
Yeah, and I think what was brilliant with Koray was that, as you said in the podcast, there's the face that people see as the educator, and then that's a conversation when you listen to it, which really didn't mention that bit whatsoever.
No,
it was about him.
Yeah,
and I think that's what's fascinating about.
I love the bit about him being very honest about his entry into ownership, how that worked for him, the challenges he had, but also those tips he gave to younger people that are coming into the profession that perhaps have business aspirations. I think when they listen to that episode, they should have a pen and paper to hand, because there are lots of nuggets in there that they can take, and they take it from somebody who's walked the walk and talked the talk. And he's got the scars, he's done it, and
interesting enough, it's in the most perceived prestigious, expensive area to do it. So it's the costs of delivery. And to get to that point, you've got to, have a pretty big old pair of shoulders to be able to do it.
One of the true rock stars of dentistry. So here we are again, another episode.
Another one to put in the can, as they say.
Absolutely. And today we are so pleased. A good friend of ours.
He is.
Today we have a dentist starting his career back in Guy's in 1985, the principal of LCIAD, which is the London Centre for Implant and Aesthetic Dentistry in London, an international lecturer, family man, lover of steak, and musician. Dr Koray Feran, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon. Lovely to be here, guys. Thank you for the invitation. We go back a long way.
We do. And we're grateful. You've had a busy morning by the sound of things. You just come out of surgery after 4 hours, you were saying.
I've literally just I've flown downstairs and hurtled through the door and put my headphones on. Had that momentary panic of, oh my God, am I connected? But I'm here.
We'll go easy on you.
You need your lunch.
You need your lunch, but also it's the specialist subject today is you, so you know all the answers. So it's not going to be particularly taxing.
Well, I think I know all the answers. Some of them are a bit nebulous still.
Before we dig into your extensive dental career, I think we need some context. So, what do we need to know about the young Koray that shaped you into the man you are today? What are the things that were formative in your young life?
The less, the better. I don't know. I mean, I grew up in a sort of a working middle class family. Only child. I was born in Turkey. I came over here when I was about 3, and spent the first formative years of my life in North London, in Wood Green and Haringey, where the old Turkish community was, and gradually sort of moved a couple of times with my parents. But I had quite a sheltered upbringing. I wasn't a party animal or anything. I was a good boy, really.
Came later.
Save that for later life.
That came later.
Only child, though.
But I think it was one of those things where it was an unspoken thing that you were going to go to university and were going to be a professional. I mean, I never even entertained the thought of being a rock star. Though there are photographs of me with a guitar when I was about 4.
We'll come on to that in good time. Did you have long hair, Koray?
I didn't. No, I've never had long hair. Just too much like hard work. Not enough time in the day. So I don't know I don't even know how I got into what I got into. It was just it just happened. I don't think I made any specific conscious choices other than kind of like, that sounds like a good idea, let's do that.
Oh, wow.
I didn't really have a plan when I was young, because I didn't know what I didn't know. As a lot of people are, when you're going through school, you don't actually know what life is about, and you don't actually know what's good for you, and sometimes it takes people a while to learn.
Any dentists in the family?
Lots. Yeah, I mean, I lectured in Istanbul recently. There were 5 members of my family in the audience who were all dentists, and there's a couple of retirees as well. So yeah, we do have it, but I don't even think that was that influenced me. I'm not entirely sure what it was. I think I might even have wanted to do medicine, but my grades just weren't good enough, so I settled for dentistry. I don't know. A friend of mine reckons he remembers me talking about wanting to do dentistry when I was about 13 or 14 at secondary school. But I don't remember. I kind of fell into it. I thought, it sounds like a good thing. It's medical, and it's artistic, and you're your own boss theoretically, and it just sounded like a good combination. So that's what I went for.
And that link between art, medicine, and independence or freedom, or however you want to phrase it. And I guess we're all only ever so free, aren't we? But that art side of thing interests me, because obviously the world you're in now is there's a heavy aesthetic element to what you do and what you achieve, but you're also an avid lover of listening to music and playing music and creating music. Do those two worlds kind of, does that creativity kind of meet at some point?
I've actually thought about this more recently than I ever have in the past. I mean, when I was younger, I used to build models and paint and draw. I was a prolific drawer. I used to get through like reams and reams of A4 just painting and drawing, and even at university I started getting into doing portraits and things, so I've got portraits of a few people I know, and then it just fell by the wayside simply because I didn't have time. It takes a long time to draw and paint, and you do it when you're a child and you've got time. But when you get into university and then work, it falls by the wayside. And I've always played guitar, but not well. I've never had a guitar lesson in my life until recently, and I've just started now with a chap that lives near me who teaches both piano and guitar and music recording. And I've started sort of learning music theory the way I should have done, which is opening some doors. Even after 3 lessons, I'm thinking, I don't know any of this. I should know. So I've done everything by ear. So I've never been good enough to turn it into a profession, but it's always been there. So through all my life, the artistic side has been there, and I've never even thought about having a career in that. Yet my daughter is multi-talented in every way. She paints, she draws, she's a digital artist, she makes things with her hands. She's a prop maker now in her course at Guildhall. And my wife Banu also was very artistic in a sort of a graphic art type of way when she was younger. So there's something in the family with it, but I've never pursued it until recently, and I realised that I'm missing out. And the guitar thing and the music thing, and especially as you get older and you realise how much music actually means to you over your lifespan, and what memories it evokes, and what the emotional side of music is. You kind of think, actually, I want to be able to do this, not just participate and listen, but I actually want to do it, to play it, and understand how it works.
So it's a very creative household, because I see that there's a 3D digital printer recently entered the house too.
Oh yes, my daughter's. I posted this morning. She started to manufacture her own Stormtrooper helmet. So
I saw that.
Taking commissions, is she?
won't take long, I think. So she's into that kind of thing. She's also teaching herself Japanese, or she did teach herself Japanese, and now she's got a tutor. Wow. So she's actually quite prolific at Japanese as well. So there are other things than dentistry.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated, Koray, because you say you're self-taught with a guitar. You've only recently just decided to get lessons to understand the formality and the structure of it. Yet this is the same person who spent 7 years at Guy's doing undergraduate studies, 2 house surgeon posts in prosthetics and Max Fax, and then 2 years MSc in perio. So your understanding and commitment to the importance of structured learning in that sense is undoubted. Yet you went freestyle with a guitar, and after only so many years, now have decided to put in place that structured learning.
I think I had a maths teacher at school who sort of ran some impromptu play-alongs at the end of the day. I think I did a term of that, and he sort of taught me how to play "Blowing in the Wind," and that's where it started. And because I've never thought about it as a career, and I've never actually had the time to take lessons, or at least I didn't think I had the time to take lessons, or the environment in which I could take lessons. I never did. My first proper acoustic guitar I bought when I was 16, with my first salary working at Boots, and I still have. So the guitar's almost 40 years old now.
Money well spent.
38 years, and it's still serving me well. I've just ordered another one.
Does Banu know?
She does, yes.
She does now.
She does. No, she does. I deliberated long and hard over it, and I've just ordered myself an emerald guitar, which is beauty. It's a thing of beauty. So I collect guitar like I collect art. I'd rather hang a guitar on the wall than artwork. So
I was watching that thing on the Sex Pistols, and even though it might surprise you with punk, some of them could play instruments, but they drafted on some bloke because he looked good, and basically he didn't have a clue how to play the guitar, and then he just learnt it, and then basically he then went on to be one of the best guitarists that people know. I can't remember his name.
And he got in with his looks.
Yeah. Basically, they said,
wow.
you look good on stage, so we'll have you.
Wow. Going back to your time at Guy's Koray, you also spent 7 years there. During that time, you're going to absorb a ridiculous amount of information. What was your method and your process to learn? And importantly, how did you retain it?
I probably need to go back to A-levels for that. I didn't do very well in my A-levels, mainly because I think I didn't know how to work. I didn't know how to learn. It was just like, lecturers dictating, me writing it down, and it just stayed there and until exam time. And when I got to Guy's, they put the fear of God in us. So basically, if you failed any exams in the first year, you were out. They gave you one chance. And I failed a couple in my first term because everybody does in their first term. I think they just do that to scare you. But then I thought I really, really need to understand how to do this. And many thanks to my dad, who basically, my parents and I went to Foyles one afternoon on a Saturday, and with the whole list of like recommended reading and alternative reading. And we bought everything. I can't remember how much my dad spent, but it was sort of, at that time, it was in excess of about £2,500 on books. And I sort of had I still have them.
Wow.
So, Companion to Dental Studies and various other books. So what I did is whenever we had a lecture, I was a very goody two-shoes. I was boring as hell at university. So I would go home, and at the weekends I would open up all the books on which that subject had been lectured on, and put everything together. And as I did that, I had the opportunity to instill stuff into my head, because I'd now done it twice, and I'd done it in my own time, and I'd done it without distractions. So when I actually had my notes that I'd handwritten, and they're still there, files and files of them, it had gone through my brain. It wasn't just a case of lecturer's notes to my notes without going through the brains of either. It actually had. It was something I now understood, and when you understand something, you don't forget it. So the understanding happened at home, and whilst that meant I probably wasn't a social animal, and I didn't really partake in all the social stuff at university that everybody enjoys, at least as much as I should have. That's probably where the foundation of everything I did comes from, and why people sort of tell me I've got a fly paper brain and how the hell do you remember that? It's because I learnt it properly in the first place, and I never forgot it, and yet that creates an even better structure to learn other things on top of. And so you just pick stuff up as you go along. I'm the sort of person, if I go on Wikipedia and look something up, I'll follow another link to another page and read that, and then follow a link to another page and another read that, and then
see where it ends up.
2 hours has gone by. It's just me.
It's interesting. You
I'm
still
weird.
kept your notes.
Yeah, I still have them. It's like, do you throw them away?
I'll say,
I
will you ever throw them away, do you think? Or do you think
but you think you've spent so many hours doing them. It's like a labour of love. So I guess, no, I probably won't throw them away.
Were you unusual in your approach back then? And do you think that young dentists who are working their way through the system to graduate soon would adopt a similar approach, or at times?
No, I think I was a bit peculiar. Really.
Yeah. Unique.
But it did it for me.
Singular.
I don't like being at the front of a class and somebody saying, right, why is it like that, and looking stupid. So not to look stupid, I became, instead, a bit of a know-it-all. Eric Waits at Guys used to call me the mouth. So when he was lecturing, he'd be like, oh, I know. He said, not you, anyone else. So it's nice to learn. I actually like the process of picking up new information and understanding something, especially if it's outside my field as well, not necessarily just in dentistry, but just being able to think, okay, what is this actually about? And it's just, I'm naturally inquisitive.
I think that'd be really interesting for people who either are doing postgraduate studies or have trouble with learning and retaining information, because everybody learns in different ways. You know, you've got auditory learners, visual learners, whatever it might be. You know, and I guess it's never been easier to receive information. You know, I'm a big fan of audiobooks and podcasts. I stick mine in the car, and they're fabulous. And I find that I can retain that information nearly as well as actually reading a physical book. It's taken a while to get into that as a way of learning, but I can retain that information. In the early days, it just washed over me like it was background noise.
As I always remember when I used to do like Dram, you know, you could read the script and the answer is you'd never get it. But if you actually read it out loud, then that would
almost
stick in your
it.
head rather than the just reading of it. And I think that, you know, I learned to, you learn, don't you, the ways that appeal to you that actually work,
suit
as opposed
to
trying to learn by something else.
Yeah, which is why I think lots of standard education only is good for the people that fall within you know, the average range. If you fall slightly outside one way or the other, it can be quite challenging, can't it? Oh, that was interesting. So in terms of your dentistry, you've been in private practice since 1998. Or fully private since 98, but prior to that you did work on the NHS, and we'll come to this at the end as well in terms of the future of the profession. But what was it like working back on the NHS in the 90s?
I didn't know any better. I mean, I was on the NHS from about 1990 to about 95, 96. So I actually enjoyed it. I did actually enjoy it, because the level of dentistry we were expected to do at that time was not as high as it is now. I mean, the patient care was more important. So whether we were doing amalgam, so no one's actually sitting there looking at your, you know, tertiary fissure carving necessarily, or you know, how good the aesthetics are. But I think we sometimes forget how much knowledge we have now and what protocols we have now in dentistry that we didn't even think about then. So I did learn how to give really good local anesthetics. I did learn how to work really fast. I did learn how to think on my feet. I did learn stamina. I learned to get on with patients. I learned to get on with staff. I learned to, and very, very, very slowly I learned about the business of dentistry, though until you actually own your practice, you don't know anything.
That's right.
We can all nod in agreement to that.
Yeah.
We as you know, in previous lives we both worked for banks, and we spent many years advising businesses on what to do. And then when you buy a business and you realise you're on your hands and knees trying to get a computer to work, that's the hard end of business.
It's that military thing, isn't it? A military plan is only as good until you survive first contact with the enemy. All your plans go out the window. That's so true.
Or is it Mike Tyson used to say, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah. So you were then in partnership back in 2010. You entered into a partnership. You've always struck me as somebody who's got a very clear view of what's important to you, what you want to do, and what excellence looks like. I'm not putting words in your mouth, but how did that sit in terms of a partnership? Because you are very clear about what you want, and that can sometimes make a partnership great, but it can also make it challenging. How did that work for you?
Not badly, but not well. As you say, I do have a clear, you know, if you like somebody, they have a clear vision. If you don't like them, they're opinionated. But I think I learned a lot from the partnership side. The first thing was you have to have like-minded people around you. If you don't have like-minded people around you, it's just going to go nowhere. You need somebody who shares the same ethos, but not necessarily the same way of doing something, but just the desire to have the same outcome.
Yeah.
So there are many ways to skin a cat, but you need to have that mentality where you have a target. What is your objective in this? I found it very difficult being in partnership because if you want to do something, you have to clear it with 2 or 3 or 4 other people first. it just doesn't work. Things just don't get done. Either somebody doesn't want to spend money, or somebody doesn't think it's a good idea, or somebody thinks it's too much, or somebody thinks it's not enough, or whatever. And I found that very frustrating, which is finally when this building came up, I thought, right, I am doing this on my own. And I may fail and fall flat on my face, and I very nearly did on several occasions. But at least it's my responsibility, and I don't have to be beholden to somebody else to make the decisions that I feel are important. But of course, everybody's opinion of what's important is, with respect, different. So I can't expect everyone to think like me. But luckily, there have been a fair few that do.
And I think when situations like that come up, I think it's quite often when people kind of leave jobs or have a major change, that quite often there's a push and a pull. So yes. I think what you described there was quite a lot of push, frustration being with partners, things not happening quickly enough, perhaps not alignment in terms of what you achieve. What was the pull? What was the attraction of being the sole principal and running your own business?
I'm the sort of person that if I go to a conference and I look at how somebody does something, I think, right, I want to be able to do that. I understand how he does it. I'm going to go away and think about it and read about it and practice it and do it. And I'm going to need, 15 grand worth of equipment to do it. I need a new surgical kit. I need this, I need that. And I invested in it because I wanted to do it. Now, why did I want to do it? That I can't tell you. It's just in my nature that I want to do something to the best of my ability. Or at least, the best of my ability doesn't mean it has to be perfect, but it means it has to be to the best of my ability. I don't cut corners. And I'd feel bad if it isn't perfect. So I'd come back again and try it until it is. So the objective isn't perfection. It's just not feeling like you haven't done something perfectly. If you see what I mean, it's a slightly different approach. What I actually found most frustrating was people can be disingenuous when they don't want to have an adult conversation. Rather than saying, right, this is how I feel and this is what I want, it's like, yeah, and then undermining you and what you stand for every opportunity. That I found the hardest thing to deal with. And being a Leo, I didn't want to sort of, kowtow and say, well, this is just how people are. I wanted an environment where I could actually say, all right, if it's not working for you, then go. But I didn't want to be undermined in my own environment. So that, I think, the objective of owning a practice was to be in control, not in a tyrannical sense, but having the options, but knowing that I have the options to take it as I feel fit, rather than being beholden to somebody else.
And as you came out of that partnership, you said kind of it took a while to get a grasp on the business side of things. Did you come out of the partnership a better, more rounded business person, or were you still quite early days on that?
I probably have to ask Chris that, because Chris was the first person that ever looked at me and said, yeah, you got no collateral, you got no prospect. I like your CV, I'll lend you some money. When he was at Bank of Ireland.
I remember that. I do remember we sat in a room, didn't we? And I remember saying something about, I'm pretty sure I said, I can't believe with this CV that you're not going to be successful. and I think that was it. We got the loan. I got the loan approved, didn't we?
You did, Bank of Ireland. You allowed me to buy into my very first practice as a partner, for which I'm very grateful, because it did allow me to get on a ladder, which is hard to do. So I'm very appreciative of the fact that you took a punt on someone you knew nothing about.
That's good old-fashioned banking for you.
It is, where you knew the manager,
and then you see the CV and you go, yeah, this place is going to be fine.
But it worked as well, that gut instinct. And the thing is, whilst you lend money for people to buy a business, you actually investing in the people.
Yeah,
if you've ever watched Dragon's Den, the dragons, they're always interested in the people, their passion, their motivation. The business they've got is the reason they're standing in front of them, but the ongoing will be it's the people that actually makes it work.
Yeah, definitely.
100%.
You were never going to be unemployed, you see. That's the way. That was my safety net.
Yes.
He tells you now.
That was a long time. When was that? Was that the
97, 98.
Flipping it, Tucker. We've all got older and greyer.
Flipping it, Tucker. Yeah, old enough to remember flipping at Tucker as well. Yeah.
And then catapult ourselves forward. You made reference to where you're sitting, but you're in a beautiful restorative 4 surgery practice in London's West End in Wimpole Street.
Some might even say swanky.
It may have been said. Swanky may have been used in that context.
It's a very nice building. I was very lucky to find it with the duration of lease it had and the size and the usability. So there's a lot of large buildings in the West End. Some of them just don't lend themselves to being a good practice. So I'm very lucky to have this.
But also very distinctive with the red brick. It's a really iconic building on the street. And you talked about the things that frustrated you in partnership. So now you're king of your own empire. What's the ethos, the culture, the approach to dentistry that you have now in your business?
I still like to think it's a democracy. I don't want to be a tyrant, because it doesn't lend itself to anything. The trick is to surround yourself with the people who understand your ethos and subscribe to it. And I've learned through tough experience that you can't force people to be like that. Some people have their own, or most people in fact have their own interests first, and then everybody else's interests second. And it takes a certain level of commitment, and it takes a certain level of patience to achieve, to get to a certain level. And it's taken me 30 years. So I like the team I have around me. I like the fact that I now have a practice where everybody understands why we do what we do, how we do what we do, and the benefit of it, both for the patients but also for our working lives, where we have less problems with confusion and miscommunication and money and, arguments and things like that. We're very, very clear when we communicate with our patients and each other as to what the rules are and what rules can be broken and what rules are sacrosanct. But it's a law of incremental gains. You can't do this in one hit. It's every single episode teaches you something that then improves your approach to the next episode. So it's a process, not an event.
It's important to get people on that journey with you, to get that buy-in, isn't it? Otherwise they just become sort of saboteurs if you're not careful, and hold you back because they're either polluting your atmosphere, that choice of words. But it is such an important way.
In a primeval way, we live and work and behave in tribes. And I think tribes that subscribe to a certain way of thinking and doing things become very strong. But also I think if somebody enters that tribe who doesn't get that ethos and culture, they stand out very quickly. But I think the byproduct of that is if it's not strong to start with, you get a real mishmash of conflicting people and conflicting views, and nobody really knows what's the things that's important and not.
And it's quite hard to change your team, though, isn't it? With HR law, you have to go down a whole process to try and move people either along your journey or out of your journey. But it's, as you say, patience.
It never actually occurred to me that anyone would be so vociferously against doing things the right way that I had no way of combating it. I just sort of sat there in disbelief. Like, why wouldn't you want to do it correctly? Why would you want to cut corners at this level?
I mean, I think one of the hardest things as a business owner is to realise that people don't work like you. They don't think like you, don't you? One of the, even when we were really small as a business, you go, well, why aren't you thinking like I'm thinking? And you're working in the bank, you go, well, but why? That just seems really sensible, but you're just ignoring it. And then you realise that people are wired differently, or just don't want to be.
For sure, they are wired differently, and it can get emotive because you work so hard. You spend so much of your energy trying to get things right, that the instant something happens to disrupt it, it's a huge amount of time and energy that you don't necessarily have to try and put it right. And it's stressful. Only if someone said to me, would you do it all again if you knew what you knew now? Would you own a business again? And I'm more in the no camp than I am in the yes camp. Though I suddenly then go back and say, well, if it was a no and I didn't own my own business, I'd just have different conflicts.
Are you good at sort of dealing with that hassle and stress yourself, or do you like go and shout in the middle of Cavendish Square or something?
I have my
go
methods.
For a walk, go for a run, whatever it might be. Play a guitar.
I have my methods. I mean, sometimes it has been distractingly difficult. And Andy, who's sort of been my agony aunt for the last 10 years, knows that very well. I mean, I sort of I explode and I say, Andy, coffee Friday morning. He said, yep, see 8:30, and I sit there and I rant for 2 hours, and he says, yeah, but there's a solution. And I'm eternally grateful to Andy for just always being the positive take on things and just calming me down and saying, actually, don't worry about it. This is perfectly normal. Go this way instead of that way, and it'll work. And he's been right pretty much every time. So I'm very grateful to both of you, really, for your influence on my career.
Thank you very much.
Your influence, collective influence on my career. So yeah, I'm grateful because you go home and you rant to your wife, or you have some very close friends, but they have their own problems, and they'll sympathise, but they can't solve your problems. You have to do that yourself. But sometimes, yeah, you I have a punch bag out in the backyard that has seen little peaks of activity.
Yeah. when Chris asked you about would you do it again, and it was like a yes or no, and you said no. Like you say, life's never really that simple. It's never as binary as perhaps sometimes it would like to be. So, assuming that you did it again, what would you change? What would you have done differently that would have perhaps made it more comfortable for you, more enjoyable?
I would have been a lot more selective in the people I chose to work with. In the back of your head, it's like, oh, I'm going to, these people are going to come in and I'm going to help them get to a certain level and nurture them and, get the teamwork in and make everything perfect. And some people just aren't interested. They kind of just come for the ride. And it's that thing about, the bees, butterflies and leeches thing that you have where, you've got the bees who are like, your Cristiano Ronaldos and who are there all the time doing their best, getting the results. They get the ethos. I've got Shiraz Khan with me, who's superb, and he's been with me for 3 years, and he's built his own practice in here. He has his own personality, his own way of doing things, but he understands what the rules of the practice are, and he works within them, and he realizes that actually benefits him. So he's the bee. He's the guy in the practice. I've got Gustavo and Fabio also, who joined in the last year, who are also growing the practice, which is really nice. I want my associates to be the people that actually lead the practice in the future. I don't want to be the person that everyone comes to see. I want it to be them. So the bees are important. The leeches are the people that come in and they don't really want to partake in the ethos. They don't want to put in the hard work. They just want the benefits. They don't really respect the staff or the patients. It's just about the money or whatever it is that they are after. And you spot them pretty quickly, and they don't last long. The difficult one is the 80% in the middle, which are the butterflies, who are lovely people and do nice work and lovely to the patients and lovely to the staff, but they really don't really pull their weight. And they just kind of coast through life, not really contributing to the business, but not bad enough that you can fire them. And it's like, those are the hardest people, I think. You say it's hard to sack someone. It's like, it is hard to fire somebody who is ineffective, but pleasant. And that's the person I found actually the most frustrating.
Yeah,
and I think that's the same for any business owner.
I think there was a study done in it was in the States a few years ago now, and they found out that 55% of employees, so people kind of working within a business, did the absolute bare minimum to not get sacked. 55%, so over half the people working in the business would literally just skimming above the line to not be dismissed for one reason or another. And if we kind of take that across all businesses, it's hard to accept that lots of people who we work with, they're just going through the motions, and it's disappointing in some ways, but then also it means that if you've got good systems and processes,
and then you're about building cultures, aren't you? Because cultures then sort of can supersede that. But you're back to then what you were saying, Koray, is that takes time and patience to get people on your journey, doesn't it? It doesn't just happen overnight.
But also, when you do ask those people who are the 55%, what is important to you, they don't have much to say for themselves. No. Argue with me. Come and say, no, this is wrong. I want to do it this way. What you're doing is stupid. It works much better this way. I'd rather have that conversation than, yeah, whatever.
Well, you think that guy we were talking to yesterday, so he's got a team, and he said to the guys, we're getting really busy and we can recruit five more people, and you'll stay in your same hourly rate of like £10 or whatever the number was. And he said, or I can employ 5 more people and I'll increase your rate to £16, but you'll have to work a bit harder. And all the people decided that they just wanted to have an easy life. So could he employ 5 more people, because they just wanted to sort of like, they weren't bad, they just wanted to
one baggers
enjoy their life.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating one, really. Rather than earn extra money, they would prefer to.
I think there's a lesson in there, and it's that thing about understanding what motivates and drives each individual person, and it becomes complex and time consuming, as opposed to just having a particular way that suits everybody. You try and kind of, in a micro way, make sure you have an environment to suit the people in the business.
The infuriating thing is sometimes there isn't anything that motivates them. That's the problem.
Yeah.
The problem is that there is no hinterland. It's just they drift, and something must be important to you. And it's like, nothing comes to mind.
And for people that are very driven and clear about what motivates them,
it's infuriating.
I was going to say that's quite challenging.
Hard work,
that's quite challenging, because you're very clear about what's important to you, because that's basically the underpinning principles of your practice. So we know what's important to you. So to be working with people who would appear to have nothing that's important to them,
strikes at your core.
That's
almost,
quite hard. And as you say, that's not the minority either.
No, yeah, we know that now.
We've talked a lot over the years about business, managing people, budgets, marketing, forecasting, and you said in the past you've come to realise that clinical skill is nothing without other soft skills and business acumen, and now like adding these into the mix for younger colleagues to consider. So you've obviously invested hugely on the clinical side. Your practice ownership experience and learning, how did that come? Was that literally through experience, or have you put any kind of formal learning in place over the years? And what are you able to pass on to the younger generation in terms of trying to accelerate their own journey through your experience?
I'm going to give an analogy that sort of came up one evening while we were having a drink with someone, and I said it's a bit like a video game. If I throw you into the level 264 of a video game from scratch, you'll get slaughtered in short order. But if you go through all the levels and you kill all the bosses, and you take your fair amount of clubbing on the way over the head and get knocked out and killed and come back and respawn again. It's a little bit like that, and by the time you finished a video game, you kind of realise that it's about the experience and all the time you've spent doing it that makes you who you are. There is no shortcut. There is no shortcut to experience. What would I say in terms of practically, what do I do tomorrow if I'm 3 years qualified and I want my own practice, or I want to be an associate in a good practice? The first and foremost one is find the right people to work with. You can start off in a sandwich shop and rule the world if you start with the right people. It doesn't matter what you do, where you start, it doesn't matter what you're doing when you start, but if you're with the right people and you have the same mindset and the loyalty and the honesty and the hard graft, you will get there. You will get there. The problem is you can be a genius, have all the money in the world, and if you're in the wrong environment, it will be for nothing. That is the biggest. That is the right people make you feel good about yourself. They make you feel that it's worth it all, and they'll be there when you're feeling down. They'll be there when you're feeling up. And if you find the right people, if you find the right environment, spend time to do it, and don't worry about hopping around 3 or 4 practices if you need to. Don't expect it all to be hunky-dory in the first place you land. Learn from it and move on. If it's great. But for me, it was the big mistakes I made were always either being in the wrong place or being with the wrong people and expecting more from them than I should have.
I think
good lesson.
I think that's really good tips. Really, really good tips. Because increasingly, dentistry is becoming more entrepreneurial. There are more and more younger dentists looking to
everything else will come. What is an entrepreneur? An entrepreneur is somebody who basically spots an opportunity and invests time and money to make it something that will give him a return on his investment, whether it's emotional or financial or fame, whatever it is that you want. For me, the bottom line was I wanted to be a clinician that was trusted. I wanted people to know that, right, if you go there, they'll do a good job. They will not cut corners. They will not fleece you. They will not damage you. They will be honest with you. That is a good place to go, is really the bottom line. Reputation is everything. That for me, that's what was important. So a mistake for me isn't a mistake. It amplifies. If something goes wrong, it has a knock-on effect, whether it's patients or whether it's staff or whether it's colleagues or whether it's just your own personal
reputation, integrity.
Can't sleep at night feeling. That to me has always been paramount. That's something not a corner I would cut.
You set incredibly high standards, and not just for the people around you, but upon yourself as well. Did you still have the ability to enjoy your success?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I like where I am in my profession. I have a lot of very good colleagues who are also in very good places in their profession and who've paid their dues to get there. They haven't done it overnight. The overnight guys may be successful for a while, but if you don't have the hinterland and the depth in time and experience, there will at some point be a rude awakening which you will learn from. You'll have a boss battle that you can't win, and you'll have to go back a level. We've all done it. We've all made really stupid mistakes. I've made some really stupid mistakes through immaturity, through presumption, through rarely through laziness, mostly because just misjudgment. But you know, every single one of those is a lesson. And you get to where you are. And now people sort of say to me, Koray, you look at something and you see stuff and I don't see it. It's like, well, okay, I didn't see it 20 years ago either. I see it now because I've been burnt by this, that and the other. And the reason the rules are here, for every rule I have, it's to avoid something that made me feel bad in the past.
Right, yeah,
true.
So learn from my mistakes and don't make your own, especially not on my time.
I think that's a great one, isn't it?
I must admit, I think the phrase, learn from your mistakes, that's the crappiest phrase ever. I'd prefer to learn from somebody else's mistakes. It's much better.
Sometimes they have to be your own.
They do. That's where you truly learn. Yeah, no, absolutely. There are certain things. It doesn't actually stick and make sense. So carrying that sort of conversation on, what are the big issues that the profession's facing over the coming years? What are the things that are coming down the track that are likely to affect the profession?
Well, at the very beginning, I think we're being deprofessionalised. I think we're being turned into a global service industry, and eventually the profession will die. I mean, Nairn Wilson has just set up the College of General Dentistry, and his argument is the dental profession doesn't have a representative body from a clinical point of view that carries any gravitas with policy making. And I would encourage everybody who's listening to join, because that we need our own Royal College. We need somebody to set the clinical standards, because we don't have anybody setting clinical standards. The BDA is effectively it's a trade union, and it's a learning resource, which is great, but it doesn't really set the clinical parameters. It doesn't say, right, this is how this should be done, and this is what a minimum standard should be. The GDC sets that for us, but nothing's written down. It's not really, we have the GDC standards, which is the ethical side of dentistry, but we don't actually have a clinical set of standards. We don't have anybody for the media to go to when they want to say, right, is this normal? What is your view on this? So I think we're being deprofessionalized. I think we are being turned into, and especially with this thing about, how much for an implant gov or how much for a crown gov, we're not salesmen of commodities, we're professionals. So your fee should be your fee. What your crown costs you, or what your cleaner costs you, what your electricity bill costs you is absolutely not the patient's business. You should have a fee based on your knowledge and the patient's trust in you and your abilities.
And who's that being driven by, Koray? Is that being being driven by the population and patients into dentistry, or dentistry marketing itself poorly?
No, I think it's being driven by the fact that that's how most of the world works from a business point of view. But we've instead of us saying, right, we're professionals, and that doesn't actually apply to us. It only applies to us in the background as we run our practices. But this sort of the patient's view of us is people who earn vast amounts of money. We have to earn vast amounts of money to be able to provide the service that we provide.
Make the investments.
But that professionalism, I spend most of my weekends writing letters and reports, and it's no fun. It's not a fun way to live. But if you don't do it, then things go wrong. And for every case in the GDC at the moment, there is a story where something hasn't been looked at properly and the professional time hasn't been spent. I think we are struggling to maintain the gravitas of the profession at the moment, and I think the older guys can see it. I was out with a colleague yesterday who's still energetically practicing. He's now 70, plays tennis every day. But he said, do you feel that it's the same as it was? And I said, no, I don't actually. It doesn't feel the same. Now, is it wrong? Should we be a service industry? Should we be able to, mail order your orthodontic treatment? Yeah, maybe we should. I don't know. Maybe that's what it is going to come to. But if we lose the profession as it stands, then we lose something very valuable that we won't be able to get back again. So I think we are being deliberately, and sometimes we're blind. Some people are sleepwalking into being salesmen as opposed to clinicians and professionals.
Interesting.
That organisation you're saying that Professor Wilson has started, we'll stick a link in our show notes. What was the organisation called, Koray?
It's College of General Dentistry. So basically it's replaced the FGDP, which used to be part of the Royal College of Surgeons, but it's actually our own college now, as opposed to being affiliated with the RCS. And Nairn's worked very hard on this, and conceptually I understand why it's an important thing, because we actually need a solid clinical representation that we don't have with any other organisation. The FGDP is no more, and this is the replacement.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
No, and I think it's a good debate and conversation to start now, because the profession altogether is a very powerful force. I just don't think it comes together often enough in a way to try and drive the change that perhaps is needed over the coming years. It can be quite fractured.
And it's better to get ahead of the curve than it is to be on the
back end of it. On the back end of it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It is. I think it's very tough in view of dental tourism on the one hand, and this kind of let's undercut our colleagues and get the business mentality. There is so much work out there for everybody, and I think if by slashing your fees and advertising to the lowest common denominator, you're doing yourself and the profession and the patients a disservice. I think you need to keep it at a certain level, and I feel that level's just dropping over time.
So let's roll forward a chunk of time, and you've just hung up your handpiece and you've stretched your arm out and a plectrum happens to fall into your hand and you're relaxing at home in your music studio where you're creating your music with your guitars around you. Is that your happy place? Is that where you can truly relax?
Yeah, especially if I'm on summer holiday at the same time in my summer house. I think that's kind of me. My friend Michael Sultan came out to the summer house this year to Turkey to spend a few days with us, and he just, I was just sort of there one morning around breakfast time, just playing some guitar, and he just said, "You live in the dream." He said, "This is what I dream of when I retire," and it's a very valuable thing. And yes, I'm not good enough to, perform. It's purely for me, but I enjoy doing it, and it's something that I can spend hours and hours on. And not think about dentistry at all while I'm doing it. So, and it's really grown in the last 7 to 8 years. The fact that I've, especially during lockdown, when I actually had time to practice, and I got quite good at playing a few things, to the point where it wasn't just subjective. People who heard me sort of said, "That's really good. I didn't realize you could do that." And it's like, oh, well,
so could we expect to see some duets between you and Doug Watt?
Well, we might do. He's coming down to train us on trios in a couple of weeks' time.
Okay.
So yes, we may do. I mean, Doug has sort of taken over as the lead of the tubulatones who got set up during lockdown, and I just haven't had a chance to practice them. But I have to say, when they were playing at the Tubulars conference, I felt very jealous that I wasn't on that stage with them. Right, there you go. Next time I'm going to be ready.
Competitive nature comes out.
Yeah, I must admit, I am fascinated by the number of people in dentistry that have a very creative edge. But also are very interested in the aesthetics and the art and the creation of dentistry. There's yourself, Doug, Andrew, and like there's a Tubal Tones crowd. And then we were speaking to Lovin, Gavin Rearson, who he's a rapper. We've obviously got Millard Shadru, who's done his parodies for years. It just interests me how there are so many creative people in the profession, and I don't think it's a coincidence that people who are creative are drawn to a profession where there's a creative artist.
They can still be
element
creative,
to it.
You can't sort of be the creative as a GP, can you? Really? Well, I'll tell you what. Let me just have a go at doing something. It doesn't quite work, does it?
It's appendectomy in B minor.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Tell you what. Let's have your heart out, and I'm going to do it in a different way today. Doesn't quite work.
I mean, it's. I think everyone should have a hobby. Everyone should have something where they can go and makes them feel happy, that they can sort of be distracted from the sort of stuff that's ricocheting around in your head, especially if you run your own business and you're working in a high intensity environment. And the guitar, and I've also got some keyboards, and I like making silly sounds on keyboards as well. I don't play any piano, no piano lessons, not even self-taught, just what sounds good, but it's just fun. I mean, it's my hobby, and as I said, people buy artwork. I'd rather hang a guitar on the wall than a painting.
We all need downtime for our brains, don't we?
Yeah, we do. It's the best there is, I think, for me.
Yeah. Brilliant. Koray, we always wrap up in the same way, just for consistency. We like to ask our guests the same two questions.
Yep.
So the first one that
we
have
can
for
gauge
you
our guests on it
is you are the fly on the wall. You can be the fly on the wall in a situation. So let us know where and when you'd like to be in a fly on the wall. Where would that be?
Well, presuming a fly has ears and can understand the conversation,
let's go with that.
I think the Oval Office would be great, wouldn't it? You just got to put a bug in the Oval Office and just listen, just for a few years, and see where all the mistakes are made.
Yeah, I think probably from
Watergate, though, isn't it?
I was going to say, yeah. I think probably for the last few weeks of Barack Obama, and then perhaps running through Trump to a couple of weeks after he left, would probably be a good time to.
or in Trump's limo with that Capitol Hill meeting. That would be quite interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. Nobody knows what goes on around behind closed doors. There's a billion conversations that take place that you have no idea of, what goes on. But yeah, I think looking at the way America's waded through its foreign policy in the last 30 years, it's like 50 years maybe. I think that would probably be where I'd put the bug.
Okay. Interesting.
Just for entertainment value.
and if you could meet somebody, who would you like to be given the opportunity to sit down and have a Goodman's steak and a glass of red wine with?
Before I answer that, I saw this question, and my friend Gustavo said, "Okay, what we need here is we need Michel Roux to be the chef, and then we need Stephen Hawking, and we need Bill Gates to make Stephen Hawking's voice recognition go faster."
So Gustavo picked 3 people.
Yeah, and a good steak.
I honestly, they say never meet your heroes. So I don't know. I think the people who've probably inspired me emotionally over the years actually probably someone like Steven Spielberg, actually, because I think he's got the power of imagination, but he's a very well grounded and very well connected and very experienced individual in life. But I also like what he's done with, he's basically the background to our childhood, isn't he? Spielberg and Lucas and that gang. So I'd, actually Spielberg and Lucas for an evening would be pretty good fun, I think, without getting too serious about it.
Yeah.
But of course, there's lots of people. I mean, the old classic ones about world leaders and things. Obama would be fun. Springsteen would be another one.
What's interesting for me is a lot of what we talked about. We kind of started with the music and the creativity, and we kind of bookended it with the same thing. And you jumped into somebody who is one of the most famously creative people of our generation. So it all knits together, doesn't it? You're obviously very passionate about the creation of things and how that mantests itself.
That's very clever, Andy. I like that.
I don't make this stuff up.
That was very good.
It wasn't a dentist.
Very seamless. Brucey, baby.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Bruce Springsteen. I've not seen him perform, but apparently he's on stage for like 4.5 hours when he comes out.
He was good at it. He's coming again next summer. Actually, if you want to really listen to a good Springsteen, is on Netflix. Springsteen Live on Broadway is his whole life in a one-man show.
Oh.
Very, very recommended for anybody who's a fan and anybody who's thinking about being a fan. That's a good show.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Koray, we'll let you go. We know you've got surgery again this afternoon. You need to eat, you need to drink, you need to have a few minutes rest. We really, really appreciate your time. It's been wonderful. It's been great.
I appreciate the invitation, guys. Thank you very much.
Slightly different. We're normally sitting across a table with tea and toast, so it was nice to do it this way.
Could do that at Goodman's on Friday.
Right, go and enjoy your afternoon. Thanks a lot, Koray.
Cheers, guys. Have a good day.
Koray. Thanks, man.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Dentology, where we discuss the business of dentistry. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe where you found this episode. That would be amazing. And also follow us on Instagram.